Hello, everybody. My name is Maureen O'Connor from Quilters Heaven in Northbrook, Illinois, and I am the Opinionated Quilter. Welcome to the very first episode of the Beginner Quilt Making series. This series is made for the very beginner, or some of you may have lost your way a little bit and want to make sure you're doing things correctly to up your game in precision piecing. We'll be bringing you these episodes every Thursday morning. So let's get started. What's the first step? The very first step is, what am I going to make? Quilters make lots of things besides quilts. I have several behind me and a few on the table to show you. Quilters make tote bags. We make table runners. Here's a very cute Elizabeth Hartman baby quilt. Here's a table topper. I also make lots of little pieces. I call these types candle mats. And I put vases on them of flowers or smaller ones, maybe candles. Could put a lamp on it. These will be coasters when they're bound. And this is a trivet that I would put on my table at Christmas time. Nice decoration. But there's so many things you can make. So what I have done is I have picked a super simple quilt pattern for you to learn the basics. Let me show it to you. I've chosen this super simple pattern to get you started on your quilting journey. It's made up of only 2 blocks. One is this 4 patch, and the other is this just solid block. So once you learn this, you will learn how to strip piece, which is a technique used in quilting a lot. And I will show you how to get your corners to meet perfectly here and when your blocks meet each other. So what are you going to need to make this quilt top? First of all, you're going to need a sewing machine. You will also need an iron, an ironing board, and rotary cutting equipment, because that's how quilters cut their fabric. People say these look like pizza cutters. They come in various sizes and styles. This is a 45 degree. This is a 60 degree. 2 different styles. And this is another brand. You just need a good rotary cutter with a good sharp blade. You also need the rulers to cut with. And you don't need to buy every single size the first day you start, but you should have a square of some sort, 6 or 8 or 9 inches square. This is a size I use a lot, a 6.5 by 12.5. And this is the size, this 6 or 6.5 by 24 or 24.5 that you use to cut your strips the full width of fabric as the fabric comes off the bolt. Now, this particular brand of ruler doesn't move at all when it's on your fabric. Others slip sometimes, so there's lots of products that you can use that can help you keep your ruler stable. And I'm sure if you go to your local quilt shop, they'll have some of these that will help make your ruler not slip. What else do we need? Obviously, we need thread. Quilters generally use just neutral color threads. We don't change the color thread for what the project we're doing. Now, you wouldn't use black thread on white fabric, but any kind of neutrals in the middle will work. And this is the brand I like, the Aurifil 50 weight, 100% cotton. What else do we need? We need needles for our sewing machine. I like the Microtex Sharp size 80-12. You need pins. These are my favorite pins, magic pins. You need thread snips. different styles, whatever you like. Everybody likes something different. Marking tools. These are friction pens that come off with heat from the iron. These are 2 different styles of chalk markers. They come in many different colors. When I was talking about the rotary cutting equipment, I failed to mention a mat. Most of the mats that people have at home are the green ones, and the size to cut the full width of fabric, you really need the 24 by 36. There's other sizes. There's mats that rotate. Again, it's what I said about the rulers. You don't have to buy every single one the first day you start quilting. So that's the equipment pretty much. In quilting, there are 3 major things that will set you up for success. One is accurate cutting. If your pieces aren't cut the right size, even if you sew them at the right seam allowance, your piece won't be the right size. So you need accurate cutting. You need good pressing, and you need, most of all, an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I will show you that on the machine when I show you how to do a test sample. First, to do that, we have to prepare our fabric to cut it. So let's go to the ironing board. Okay, I'm here at the ironing board, and one of the biggest controversies in quilting is to wash or not to wash your fabric. I do not wash my fabric. After I make a quilt, the first time I put it in the wash, I make sure that I wash it with a color catcher. Color catchers kind of look like dryer sheets. They're in the laundry aisle at Target or the grocery store. But I find sewing on fabric that is not washed is easier than sewing on fabric that is washed. So I press my fabric, and I either use starch, just regular starch, again from Target or the grocery store, or there's starch alternatives. Mary Ellen's Best Press is a favorite, and this Acorn has a fabric treatment and a nice mist bottle that a lot of people like as well. So I'm just going to press my fabric so that I can then show you how to cut strips. And I just do a light spray. I know there's people who soak their fabric and bleach overnight and just really go heavy-handed. I don't. I starch it, but I don't go crazy. And this just stiffens it up so that cutting is easier and hopefully more accurate. So now that the fabric is pressed, now we can cut it. Okay, now I've got the fabric back on the cutting mat, and I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line up a line on the ruler on the fold of the fabric. So make sure that you've got your selvage edge up at the top and your fold at the bottom. And now I'm putting this line right here on the fold. And I'm now going to make a straight cut, and we call that squaring up. Now, if you're a lefty, you would have done this on the left side of the fabric. You would have had your fabric over here, lined your line up on the fold, and then as a lefty, you would have then cut like this to square it up. And then now we're going to make a cut of the width we want. And to test your 1/4 inch seam allowance, I want you to cut 3 1.5 inch strips. I'm going to just show you on one fabric here, but you really want at least 2 fabrics, if not 3 different fabrics, to test your 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I don't know if you noticed, I just flipped the fabric from where I cut over here, I flipped it over to this side. So now I'm going to look at my ruler and I'm going to say, I want to, oops, I hit it right the first time. I want to cut 1.5 inches. So there's my 1.5 inch line right there. So I line my 1.5 inch line on the edge of the fabric, and I again have a straight line here. And now I'm going to cut. And if you were a lefty, assuming this was the edge you had squared up over on this side, and now it's on this side, you would lay your 1.5 inch line here. So you lay the 1.5 inch line. Now it's upside down, mind you, because that's what happens with lefties. But you can see it's the 1.5 inch line, and then you would cut like this, and you'd get the same result. So you only need about 6 to 8 inches to do your test. I've pre-cut a different fabric in the right lengths that we need. So let's go over to the sewing machine. Now you're going to need a sewing machine in good working order. If it comes with a 1/4 inch foot, all the better. If it doesn't, you should try to purchase one. I have my 1/4 inch foot on my Bernina, and it is a 1/4 inch from here, the needle, to the edge of the foot. There's also a 1/4 inch mark right here, and that's the one I like to look at when I sew. There's also a 1/4 inch line down below. So there's lots of places to keep you nice and straight. So now I'm going to sew my 3rd strip. I've sewn 2 together already and pressed, and I'm going to sew a 3rd strip. My stitch length is set at 1.75. You don't want a too long a stitch length. I'm just trying to keep everything nice and even. You don't need to push and pull your fabric. The feed dogs will do their work. You say, what are the feed dogs? These guys are the feed dogs, and as it sews, these pieces push the fabric forward. Your hands should just guide the fabric. Let the feed dogs do their work. I'm going to press this, and I'll meet you back at the cutting table. Here is my piece pressed, but I want to back up just a step. I went to the sewing machine, went to the ironing board with it like this. And what quilters do is we first just press on top here and then push this up and back and then press. And now is the key. Will this measure the right width? So the quilter's math will do again. I don't want to scare anybody now. So just suffice it to say that this piece of 3 1.5 inch strips, when sewn together, should be equal 3.5 inches wide. So I'm taking my ruler and I lay it on here and it hits exactly 3.5 inches. So I passed the test. So what happens if your piece measures 3.25 inches? Well, that means that your seam allowance is too big. If your piece measures 3.75 inches, your seam allowance is too small. So you need to try again and find on your machine where the fabric should line up to your needle to make sure that you get a piece that measures 3.5 inches across when you sew three 1.5 inch pieces together. This is a huge key to your success. So between now and the next time when we start sewing, practice on some scraps. You can put a piece of painter's tape on your machine if you don't have the marks on it like that are on my machine. There's also things you can buy at the quilt shop that can attach to your machine to help you. The best thing is to have an accurate 1/4 inch foot. So whatever brand machine you have, they should have a 1/4 inch foot. So between now and next time, let's get that down. I want to give you the fabric requirements so you can gather those up too, and you can start sewing with me next week. So the fabric requirements for the body of the quilt is 1/4 yard of each of 2 of the fabrics. That would be for those 4 patches. And then 3/8 of a yard for the solid square. Now, the pattern does give you border requirements, but you may choose to not get them right away. You can also purchase them now if you like. The border requirement is 3/8 of a yard for the inner border and 7/8 of a yard for the outer border. There's so many decisions in quilting that you can make. You could say, that border's too wide, I'm going to make it narrower. You could say, I want to make more blocks for the center of my quilt and make my borders smaller. So it's really entirely up to you. You could get a little bit more of each of these. So if you do decide to make it bigger, you can. Or you could say, no, this is my first one, I'm going to make a small one. And that's fine too. These borders are kind of big. This is a 2-inch border. This is a 5-inch border. If I'm making this, I'm probably not making them this big. So you can wait if you like. The binding is 3/8 of a yard. You're not going to be doing that till about 4 episodes from now. So you could choose to get it now because it's something you like and you want to get it. But you can wait on that too. And same with the backing. You're not going to need the backing for a while, but the requirement is 1.25 yards. The thing I didn't mention, and I should have the very beginning of this episode, is how to pick your fabrics. So if you don't have anything in a stash or inherited from mom or a quilting friend, you would go to a fabric store. And what I would suggest you do is find one fabric that you love, and that would be this one. And then you look for 2 fabrics for here that look nice with this. And if you go to a quilt shop, they should be so very happy to help you. So between now and next week, get that 1/4 inch seam allowance down, gather a little bit of fabric, and we'll get started with sewing. I will see you next week. I'm looking really forward to helping you on this quilting journey.